Jack, when you and I were chatting and getting ready for the podcast, you mentioned that as markets are softening in many cases, that there's a little bit more anxiety and the need for really trying to produce showings and hopefully contracts is maybe making realtors lose down a little bit on their guard on really qualifying prospects. Tell me what that brought that to mind for you and what you're seeing.
Well, I think first of all, most of what we're hearing in the media, whether it be social media or on television broadcasts or whatnot, anything about the economy when it comes to real estate, is talking about the drastic drops in sales. And so just hearing those terms thrown around like that makes folks nervous. It makes sellers nervous. It makes agents anxious, particularly agents who haven't been in the business for a very long time. And I want to start with a bit of good news before we talk about how to handle the anxiety piece. Here's the good news. I mean, yes, the market has dropped nationally. I think the number is somewhere around 34% from 2021. But if you look at 2021 in the historical context, it's an outlier. It was a year like no other. And so if you pull that year out and look at the last, you know, 7 to 10 years in real estate, really this past year is off maybe about 2.5% nationally. And that varies according to market. So the good news is the market has softened a little bit, but it's not softened nearly as much as one might think by watching the news.
I
Um,
totally agree.
yeah, so that said, but there's still this angst, if you will, I think, because it's so drastically different today than it was even 6 or 9 months ago. So that's what we're dealing with is this shift and the anxiety that comes along with that. So yeah, I think the reason we need to talk about it is because, you know, when I sit down and talk with sellers, they're nervous, they're anxious on what to expect. What is it really like now, and what kind of timing are we talking about? It's no longer a conversation about days; it's more of a conversation about weeks and months, which is typical real estate. But I think agents, and again, we've had a lot in our market. We've had a lot of agents who aren't necessarily all that experienced have had the opportunity to market some really nice luxury listings because the market was so fluid and so hot. And they're getting nervous because they've not worked in really a normal market for any great length of time. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, yeah.
And I'm finding that as well as I'm bringing listings onto the market of trying to counsel sellers on what to expect when we really don't know either, right? So we can talk about the historic perspective. We can talk about the difference between what they could have expected 6 months ago, 12 months ago, and really just kind of prepare them for anything to happen. Because I think still in my market in particular, we still have a shortage of inventory, particularly good inventory. So things are going quickly, but they're maybe not going to see full price offers, certainly not 12 offers above list immediately. So I think you're right that seller anxiety is really important.
Yeah, I think one thing that contributes to the agent anxiety is that, on any given day, as you go through email, I find myself hitting the delete button, 100 times, 150 times, all the promotional emails that come through after we review. And so many of them that we see today have the headline, new price adjustment, right? That sort of terminology, and you see that over and over and over again. And yeah, it causes a bit of anxiety. And I think with that comes the pressure on listing agents to perform. And in some cases, it's because sellers have seen up until the last 6 or 8 months so much information about things selling at list, above list, selling quickly, multiple offers. And I think some agents have gone into listing appointments perhaps promoting their business plan based on a year ago and not based on today. Instead of hearing they win the prize and they've got the listing, they suddenly find themselves now they've got this pressure to perform. And I think how that translates is if the phone's not ringing, if we're not getting the calls in the first few days, we've got to generate a showing. We've got to generate a buyer. We've got to show that there's some interest out there. And so the first little temptation that we have, the first bait that we see as agents, as a buyer who's calling on the listing, are we doing our proper due diligence for our clients when we get those buyer calls?